J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
And welcome in. It is America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. It's the game show, guys. I'm Tom Bastek.
And I'm Mike Jacobs. Thanks for coming back yet again. Episode 11. Holy cow.
Yeah, we made it to 11, Mike. We're doing something right.
Yeah, it's like Spinal Tap's amps, right?
We go all the way to 11.
And beyond. We're going to keep going.
Well, I hope. Let's not get taken off the air this week, Mike, please.
Yeah, well, we're doing our best.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for last week's supermarket sweep. Huge success for that one.
Well, so successful, it seems that Netflix has taken our lead on this one, and they got some classic episodes up there now.
Yeah, they dropped 15 episodes literally days after we put out our episode on supermarket sweep. I'd like to thank them for stealing from us.
I'm not saying that Netflix is copying our podcast.
No.
But maybe their programming manager is a fan of the show or something. Who knows?
You know who is a fan of the show is Lena Hall. We want to say a special hello to her. She listened into our supermarket sweep episode.
Oh, give me who is Lena Hall?
Oh, okay. So if you don't know, you might know her from Girls. She's in the show Girls, or was in the show Girls. She is currently in the show Snowpiercer. Personally, I know her from all of her amazing work on Broadway.
Oh, I see. Well, those are all things I was unfamiliar with. I didn't even know there was a show of Snowpiercer until just this moment. So there you go.
I don't watch it. Lena, don't take that the wrong way. I apologize.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the same way, I don't mean it to any slight to her that I don't know who she is. I have my finger very far from the pulse of pop culture, so that's
okay, because we're not talking pop culture this week, Mike. We are talking for episode number 11. The password is password.
Ooh, we're talking classic stuff. All right, I'm in.
Yeah, let's not waste any time. What do you say we bring Christian in and move right into the news?
Let's go.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. I'm Christian Carrion. The world of classic television is in mourning after the death of Hugh Downs, who passed away at his Arizona home at the age of 99 last week. Downs was known as a presenter on ABC's 2020, as well as Jack Parr's sidekick on the second incarnation of The Tonight Show. However, many game show fans remember him best as the original host of Concentration, the daily puzzle game that premiered in 1958 on NBC. Downs hosted the show for the first 11 years of its record-breaking 17-year run. Concentration was the longest-running game show in TV history until The Price is Right eclipsed that record in the late 1980s. If a high-ranking official at Viacom's Pluto TV is to be believed, Bob Barker's Price is Right may be coming back to television. On a recent Facebook post discussing the possibility of Buzzer airing classic episodes from Barker's 35-year tenure as host, a woman named Amy Beth Kessner commented that Pluto will soon be adding a 24/7 Bob Barker channel. Amy is Pluto's Senior Vice President of Content Strategy and Global Partnerships and has proven to be a reliable source of information regarding upcoming programming on Pluto TV. Reruns of the original Price is Right on CBS have not been rerun since GSN's contract with CBS lapsed in the early 2000s. In 2007, around the time Drew Carey took over as host, then CBS President Les Moonves said in an interview that CBS does not intend to re-air Barker's episodes while Drew's version is still in production. But this news would indicate a change of heart on the part of the network.
I'm intrigued by the idea of a channel that is just basically Bob Barker episodes of Price is Right on shuffle. Like, what a great thing to have at like 2 o'clock in the morning if you can't sleep. But it's going to inevitably go the route of MTV and GSN and all these other networks that start off with one thing and end up being something different.
So I'm going to tell you you're wrong, and the reason is because that's not the way Pluto works. This is my problem with Pluto to begin with. Like, they have a James Bond channel, which you would think would be totally awesome. James Bond 24/7. Well, they've only got rights to some of the Bond movies. So you get the same 7 average James Bond movies. They're not even the best James Bond movies. And they run them over and over and over again. And this is why Pluto has like 600 channels, because they literally will just keep showing Bob Barker reruns over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And you will never get anything else in there except for that.
Well, someone did the math, and I think it takes about 6 or 7 months to watch all of his episodes back to back with no commercials. So that's a lot of content. One of the things that I'm concerned about, and this is going to get personal for just half a second, the sexism on the early episodes of The Price is Right is not going to age well. And I am concerned as to how they are going to address that. If you ever watch some of this 1970s, early to late 1970s episodes of The Price is Right, the sexism and the creepy comments are through the roof. So I'm interested to know what the reaction to that is going to be, because they haven't been re-aired in a very long time.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I mean, in all fairness, I mean, you go back on any of those shows, Gong Show for sure. You go Match Game, you go Family Feud with Richard Dawson. They were all sexist in there, all of them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was rampant.
All right, what else you got for us, Christian?
Well, a game show that launched a cultural phenomenon and a sometimes overused catchphrase is coming back to TV. NBC announced that they're rebooting The Weakest Link. The show, which aired for 2 seasons each on NBC and in syndication from 2001 to 2002, saw teams of strangers playing a fast-paced trivia game to bank money, with the teams voting to eliminate a player dubbed the weakest link at the end of each round. Jane Lynch, known for her roles in movies and television, as well as the host of Hollywood Game Night, is taking over for the original host, Anne Robinson, who hosted the original British series as well. I'm looking forward to it. I remember that the show got a little bit boring because they sort of drowned it with celebrity episodes, and they did that like 4 or 5 nights a week. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with this new version.
I never liked it. Mike, were you a fan?
I'm totally torn. First of all, I love Jane Lynch, like, to the moon. She is the best, and so I'm very, very happy to see her take the hosting seat. I'm very torn on the show, though, because I think it is a great format for a quiz show, but I think the gimmick of like being mean to the contestants wears thin pretty quickly. And I don't think it's like they try to sell the game on that gimmick. And I don't think that's really where they should go with it. And I also think that, knowing who I am, if I were on that show, I would be so mad at the host being a jerk to me. Be like, you know what? Screw you, man. I'm out of here. Like, I would not enjoy myself.
I agree with that 100%, though, because TV in the early 2000s was all about humiliation, and this show in particular was essentially a combination of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and Survivor.
With a little American Idol thrown in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that mechanic, I don't know that that's aged very well. So that'll be interesting to see if it's as humiliating to the players as the original version was.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is that I would really hope, like, Jane Lynch plays a baddie so beautifully. I don't know if anybody saw her on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but she was absolutely amazing. But I will tell you this, I think she could definitely play that, "You're the weakest link, goodbye." But I also think that she could do it with comedy, and it would be taken so much better. Mike, I don't think you'd be upset about that. I think we'd all get a great laugh out of it, and it would go away, and we wouldn't have that degradingness, you know?
If they do it more the way how Ellen does it on Game of Games, that I'm totally cool with, because she's just like very like, you lost, sorry, get out of here. Well, you know, and it makes it more fun as opposed to the host actually like being a jerk.
Absolutely. Well, I remember when they did the daytime version of The Weakest Link, they had George Gray, who's the announcer on The Price is Right now. He was the host of it, and he was really, really funny. And it became like just a really funny game, as opposed to, you know, the goal being to embarrass everybody that was playing. It was just a lot of fun. So there are a lot of different ways that you can host The Weakest Link. I hope they go the more fun-loving, don't take it so seriously route.
Right on. What else you got?
Well, we have another British game show that's looking to jump across the pond, The Cube. The Cube is one of the UK's most popular series. Soon is going to be entering production in North America. So The Cube is a stunt show almost like Minute to Win It, except these challenges that the contestants have to complete take place in the cube, which is a big cube on set. It's lined with hundreds of cameras. So you get a lot of these sort of Matrix-like shots of, contestants throwing ping pong balls into cups. And it sounds, mundane, but they elevate these tasks to just like this grandiose theatrical level. So players have 9 lives to complete these challenges to win a big cash prize, and they are looking for contestants. So actually, the 2 shows that I did mention, The Weakest Link and The Cube, are looking for contestants right now. You can head to buzzerblog.com. We have information on the casting, as well as email addresses and links to their applications. So good luck to anybody looking to try to get on a game show this year.
That's awesome. That Cube game, I've seen an episode of it. They've got 9 seasons they've done in the UK. I've seen one episode, and it's amazing.
Why do all the
such
best
a good
game shows
show.
come from the UK?
I don't know. The UK just loves them, man. They just love them.
They do a great job at it.
There was originally, about 10 years ago, they did try to bring the Cube to America on CBS, and they had Neil Patrick Harris hosting it. And I think they just did a pilot. Nothing ever happened with it, but this will be the second attempt to bring that to America. Really, really popular show.
Really excited for it. That's great. All right. Is it time for This Week in Game Show History?
It is time for This Week in Game Show History. I have another obscure one for you. A premiere, July 18th,
All right.
1977. It is a show called The Better Sex. And
Wait, what station was it?
this was on ABC, actually. This was on during the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not what I'm thinking.
No, it is not. And actually, the rumor is that they erased a lot of episodes of Family Feud to reuse the tape for The Better Sex. So
Wow.
it's up to you whether you want to believe that was worth it or not. So The Better Sex was a game of bluffing, and it had 2 teams of 5 men and 1 team of 5 men, 1 team of 5 women. The host would give one person on the team a question, and they'd slide them the answer on a card. Now, they could either read that answer to the other team or bluff and make it seem like they're reading that answer. Then the other team would vote on whether they were telling the truth or not. If they were wrong, they would get knocked out of the game. And then the winning team would play the same type of game against 30 members of the studio audience, which was really, really cool. They had everybody stand up in the audience. They all had these big paddles with agree or disagree lights on them. And it was a really interesting show. It took a lot of risks. The main one being that there were 2 hosts at the same time, 1 man and 1 woman. So Bill Anderson was a country singer who I guess his agent wanted him to get on more TV. He was a really good host, very warm. And then a woman named Sarah Purcell, who at that point was a local newswoman in the Los Angeles area. They hosted the show together, had incredible chemistry, but the ratings just weren't there, and it got canceled after a season. But The Better Sex, really interesting show if you get to see some of it on YouTube.
So one question for you, that final bonus round, when you said they had 30 members of the audience stand up, were they of the opposite sex of whoever won?
Exactly. So if the men's team won, it would be 30 women in the audience that would stand up, and then vice versa.
That could be a firing squad right there, man.
Well, there are some clips on YouTube of one team member knocking out all 30 audience members on one question. It's happened a couple times. It's incredible to see.
I'm going to have to go down the rabbit hole on that one.
It's just it's such a cool show.
I do want to give a quick caution to you, Tom, and our listeners. Please take care when looking for this show.
Okay.
There is a lot of inappropriate results.
Oh, okay. Not safe for work.
Yes, very much so.
Search for The Better Sex ABC game show. That'll probably be your best bet, and just stay away from image search.
Okay,
Yep.
Great. Okay, perfect. That's really good to know. All right, this week, Christian, we're doing Password.
I love Password. Password is one of those games that
Wait, is it one of your favorite games?
It's always one of my favorite games. Have you noticed that I've said that every single damn week?
We may have made brazen overtures to such a comment last week. There's a possibility of that.
Listen, I love game shows, period. But Password, I swear to God, definitely is one of my favorites. So,
all right, let's have it, kid. What do you got for us?
You got to trust me on that. Well, before Jeopardy became the go-to game for kids to learn in school, it was Password. Password was played in elementary schools, elementary, middle, high schools all across the country at its peak. It's one of those games that really never ages. I was having a discussion with a friend of mine the other day about game shows where the material tends to age and doesn't tend to replay as well. Words never age, and the challenge of that game never ages. It's been on the air in a million different versions, but yeah, Password is just one of the best word games I think of all time.
All right, how about a quick plug for Buzzr Blog?
Of course, buzzerblog.com, the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for casting information, reviews, news, we have it all, from game shows to any other form of unscripted entertainment. Buzzerblog.com is the place to come. Thank you.
All right, thanks to Christian. Appreciate that. Michael, what do we have else that we have to hit before we come back for gameplay this week?
Do we have anything this week?
We're working on a Patreon. Do you want to mention that?
Oh, yeah. Hey, we're working on a Patreon. Yeah, to that end, let's go ahead and put this out to the fans. If there's anything you would like to see as like a reward on the Patreon, let us know. Standard things, of course, being behind the scenes stuff and stuff like that. But, if there's anything specific anyone out there would be looking for, let us know, and we'll certainly take it into consideration.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Michael, for bringing that up. Wonderful.
Thank you, Tom, for bringing it up.
All right, when we come back, we've got the gameplay of our featured episode, our featured game show this week, which is Password.
Password is...
What is the password, Mike?
Ironing board. No, that's 2 words. Dang it, I'm terrible at this.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. Hey gang, it's Mike and Tom from America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, and we want to talk to you a little bit today about how we got started with Anchor.fm.
Yeah, it's interesting with so many podcasts out there, it's not as easy to get started as you might think. And it was a pretty daunting task at first, but during my research, I came across Anchor.fm, and boy, I tell you, it seems like the perfect solution for getting started.
You said it best, Mike. They had a way to grow the podcast. We had the opportunity to put our podcast out there on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the platforms, and then make money from the beginning with minimum listenership and then grow.
Yeah, exactly. It's the perfect platform to get everything done. They've got all the tools to edit and publish and all that kind of stuff right there, straight from your phone. Even if you don't even have a computer, you can do it. And we can start small, and we'll have features to help us every step of the way.
If you're looking to get things started on your own podcast, just download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor.fm to get things started. If you know that music, you know what time it is. It is time for the password. And Michael, you've got our gameplay for us this week, right?
Yeah, and what I want to preface this all by saying, often I mention simplistic gameplay as a negative or a downside to a show. And in this case, I want to try and wipe that assumption away, because it is a simplistic game, but it's really, obviously it speaks for itself. It's a classic. But let's just dive in. So we have 2 teams. Each team comprises of 1 celebrity and 1 civilian, a contestant that gets on the show just like any other game show. And 1 player on each team is given the password, and the password is also revealed to the audience. They show it up on screen. And in the older versions, which I'm sure you've seen this parodied before, but they would whisper it on air for the audience as well, which it's kind of creepy if you go back and watch those older episodes.
Yeah, and I do remember it too, because I definitely remember the password is
right
couch.
And I had always known it through pop culture references and other like TV shows and where it's parodied and things like that.
Sure.
But just seeing it live, the password is, it was, and because it's a person doing it. It's like someone whispering into your ear, and it's like, stop, man, get out of here. I don't need that. It's weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but once you watch it a little bit, you get used to it, and then you're like, okay, all right, I'm ready.
Right. So then the teams take turns giving their teammates a 1-word clue,
and trying to guess the password, obviously. And by take turns, I mean, Team A gives a clue if they get it or not. Or I'm sorry, if they don't get it, it then passes to Team B, who now has more clues, right? Because you can remember previous clues that have been given, but you get less points as it passes back and forth. The points reduce each time. So the sort of traditional method of doing it was that you would have the first guess be worth 10 points, then 9, 8, so on and so forth down the line. Later shows they did that same format, but they would end it at 6, meaning that the last point value is worth 5, and that's as low as it would go. That was sort of a way to speed up the game.
So, Mike, why don't you give me an example of one of the passwords, and I'll try to guess it so that the folks know exactly how it would be done. Like, how would the celebrity give the clue, and then I'll give the answer.
Gotcha. So from the ones that I was watching last night, my absolute favorite, most creative hint was the word soundlessness.
Soundlessness. Silence.
Silence is correct.
Right.
And so here's the interesting thing is on the show, the contestant said silent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they initially, like, the bells went off and they awarded the points and whatever, but then immediately afterwards, Alan Ludden, the host, was like, actually, the judges have told me you gave the wrong word. We'll give you one chance to get it right. And since the guy knew what he had said and what the right word was, it wasn't a problem. He got it right. But it's just interesting that they had to be that nitpicky and say you have to get the exact right form of the word.
Yeah, that's not the only time that's happened, because it happens a lot in Wheel of Fortune where somebody mispronounces something, or they slur it, or they do whatever they do, and they don't get credit for it.
Yeah, and I mean, what I appreciated about that situation was that they gave him a chance to correct it, as opposed to just being like, nope, that's wrong, we're taking it back.
I would have assumed that's what they would have done, because in Wheel of Fortune, that time that the lady just slurred the word, I think she said something like running as opposed to running.
Yeah, something like that. I remember that.
Yeah. They did not give her another chance. So that's really cool. They actually gave him another chance there.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So later editions also, we were talking about shortening to 6, they also did a thing where when they handed out the clues, they would let the team decide if they wanted to pass or play, which it seems like kind of a small thing, but to me, that is a huge strategic adjustment, in that if you look at the clue, if you look at the password and you immediately have a clue that you're like, I know I'm on the same wavelength as this person, they're going to get it from this word, I'm going to go first. But if you think, if they're going to give clue A, and then I can pile clue B on top of that, and then we'll get it. It's a very strong, I think, way to approach the game. That I really thought was a cool small tweak.
It's very interesting, because there wasn't a lot of celebrities there was a lot of celebrities that wanted to play this game, but there was a lot of celebrities who did not want to play this game, because it really does show whether or not you're a bonehead or not. I mean, this takes a certain level of intelligence. And, interestingly enough, Carol Burnett was talking to her audience before one of her shows, and somebody asked, when are you doing another game show? And she was a regular on Password, and she said, I don't do game shows. And they said, no, wait a second, you're on Password. And she's like, well, that's not a game show. And I understand what she was saying for two reasons. One, this really takes a lot more knowledge for a celebrity, believe it or not. And then the second thing is that this was a show that a lot of people who didn't like game shows really got into.
I could see that.
I mean, they really enjoyed this show. This was, because it's very approachable. I mean, yes, you do have to be intelligent, and you have to have some sort of brains, but it's very approachable. I mean, the Play at Home show, the whole family would get together, and we'll talk more about that down the road with Alan Ludden, but kids played it, teens played it, college kids played it. Anybody could play the show whatsoever. You could play the show with your 11-year-old niece if you wanted to.
Well, and that's that. I totally agree with you. I think part of the appeal of this show is that anybody can play it, but not anybody can be really good at it, right? And you can have fun playing it even if you're not good at it. And like sometimes it's fun to guess people's clues when they're really good at giving clues and you're not. It's very, very approachable. You are right. I do want to say it's interesting you brought up Carol Burnett, because she actually was the one that gave Password Plus the name. Not that it's the most creative name in the world, but originally they were going to call it Password 79, which was a trend, I guess, in the 70s, because you had Match Game and those airport movies did the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, you did.
But yeah, she was part of the original, like, I guess, testing audience or whatever. Not audience, but, you know, played the game to test it. And she was on the show and said something along the lines of, well, hey, this is like Password Plus. And they were like, oh, that's great. Let's name it that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, the plus of Password Plus being that all the passwords in the round that the contestants were guessing had a theme to them. And so over the course of the round, they would reveal all the passwords that have been said so far, and then you have to put together what they were. Like, for example, one of the ones I watched was, I'm trying to do them in order and see if you can guess it.
Okay, I'm ready.
Rock Island Convicts.
Alcatraz.
Correct.
Nice.
Yep.
All
yep.
right.
So that was the Password Plus. They also had a round called the Alphabetics round, which was 10 questions, and you would get the first letter of each one. So you actually go through the alphabet. So you'd start at whatever letter they started with, and then go through the alphabet for 10 letters. So you always knew what letter the answer started with. But I think because of that, they typically tried to make them more difficult words. Not that they were words that people didn't know, but just words that you wouldn't necessarily think of. Like for Q, it was quintuplets. And I think that's kind of a hard one to come up with, you know, for a single clue. Also in that round, they were not allowed to give a second clue until the contestant gave an answer for their first clue. And so there's a lot of the celebrity giving their first clue and then the contestant just like freezing because they don't know what it is, and they're trying like, all right, I'm just gonna think of every Q word I know, but they're not saying any of them. And then so like everybody's just like, say something, say anything, because they can't move on until they make some sort of guess.
Huh, interesting. So if you're on A, you're not moving to B until it guesses aardvark, and you're like, okay, great. No, that's wrong. Move on to B.
Well, not move on to B, but you can get your second clue for A.
You couldn't give a second clue until they made a guess first. That's interesting.
Right. The alphabetics and theme of the passwords and Password Plus, that was obviously later. The original ending of game, quote unquote, was over the course of the round, you're guessing these passwords, whichever point or whichever team gets the most points, then goes on to the lightning round, which, along with the show Beat the Clock, was one of the two first bonus rounds ever on game show history, was the lightning round in Password, which is, of course, where the prolific term of lightning round comes from.
Huh. Interesting. That's great.
Yeah, the course of the lightning round, you just have 60 seconds to guess 5 passwords. You know, what it sounds like, basically. You just got to get all 5 within 60 seconds, which is, you know, it's fine. And that's how the original show ended. They would have the 2 contestants play to that point, and then they would leave, and then 2 more contestants would come back on and play with the celebrities again. It's, again, you know, what I was saying earlier, it's simplistic compared to today's game shows like The Cube, where things just get bonkers real quick. But there's something endearing about its simplicity and approachability, and yeah, it's just great.
I do enjoy it. All right, why don't we take a break, Mike, and when we get back, we'll talk some history.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, you've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. Welcome back. Segment number 3 of episode number 11 on the password. This week's showcase. Michael, you've got history for us.
I sure do. October 2nd, 1961. That is when America...
It's a great year. It's a great year.
Indeed it was. That was when America saw the first episode of Password on CBS, with, of course, the legendary Alan Ludden hosting the show. And over the years, as we noticed, Betty White was a recurring guest celebrity on the show.
She was known for this show. She loved the show.
Well, and she loved more than the show. In fact, her and Alan Ludden, having met on the show, eventually married, and I believe stayed married for the rest of Alan's life. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have to laugh because there's 2 interesting things here, and one I don't know it was true, but I want to hear that the first password she was given was flirt.
Oh, really?
I don't know if that's true. I'll have to go down I'm going to have to go down the rabbit hole on it. But the other thing is, I will tell you that Alan Ludden proposed to her twice before she said yes.
Oh, really? Well, good
Yeah,
good
she
on
didn't
him
wanna
for
marry
being
him at first.
persistent.
Yeah. Very cool. And they had great chemistry together. Mike, you were actually talking, I think, a little bit about this, that when she was around, his demeanor kind of changed a little bit.
Well, I wouldn't say so much it was that his demeanor changed on the show, but there was something about the 60s episodes, and maybe it's just a difference in, time and culture and that sort of thing, but it all feels very in the past, right? Like none of these people feel real. They're all the sort of television people that you see on TV. When you watch Betty White, it's like seeing Betty White today. She has this natural attitude to her that she feels like a different entity than anybody else on that show. Everybody else is so stiff and, late 50s starch shirt stuffiness that was so prevalent back then. And she just didn't have that. There was a flow, a naturalness to her that she felt like a human when a lot of other people didn't, is basically what I'm getting at.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Really great.
Yeah. She's awesome.
Oh, she is awesome.
Yep.
Love her to death. Keep going.
Yeah, so we see a lot of success with the show. They also started a weekly primetime version in 1962. And like I say, they're going well for years. And then one fateful day, it's interesting that you can almost pinpoint the day that ended the show. The day that sealed the fate.
Yeah,
because
a lot of times, like ratings is over the course of like a season or whatever. Yeah.
Well, so July 11th, 1966. The show was preempted for a news segment. It was just an update about the Vietnam War. But CBS preempted Password to show this news segment, and other networks didn't. And the key there was that people that were watching Password went and watched the brand new Newlywed Game.
Huh.
Also on another network, Days of Our Lives was picking up ratings because of that. And it's just interesting that over the course of a single day, Newlywed Game and Days of Our Lives picked up enough ratings to spoil the successes that Password had. 67 is when it finally ended. Fred Silverman cancels it. And I think maybe there's, I don't want to say a conspiracy, but I think maybe he took the steps necessary to see that it was canceled.
Really?
He was famously not a fan of game shows. And I mean, obviously, if the ratings were declining. But again, the idea of one day being the linchpin for it seems like it was kind of like, he was like, oh, see, I told you, and just cancels it right away. But it did not stay canceled for long. In 1971, it got picked back up. And this was due largely to the fact that after the original cancellation, they resold the show for reruns, and the reruns performed very, very well. People still really liked the show. And so sure enough, they brought it back in 71. Notably, when it came back, it replaced the, I guess you could call it a soap opera, but sort of a cult soap opera, Dark Shadows. They later made a movie of it not too long ago, but that it ended up canceling that show and replacing it, and it did not please fans. There were apparently some very strongly worded letters written about that one.
Yeah, that was back in the day, though, where letters actually made a difference.
Yep. Yeah. Well, not so much in Dark Shadows' case, because it stayed gone until that movie a couple of years ago. But what are you going to do? So 74 was a landmark year for Password. That was when they won an Emmy for Outstanding Game Show. And in fact, it was the first ever Daytime Emmy awarded for Outstanding Game Show. So congratulations to them to being the first. Obviously, I think Jeopardy has the most, but you know what? Password got the first, and that's great to me.
Cool.
They even, after that happened, they put a giant Emmy statue on the stage for a while, and it stayed there until the remake of the show later, so good on them.
That's great. Love it. Love it.
But as these things tend to happen, ratings steadily declined over the years. You can only do the same thing for so long before people start to tune out. And sort of towards the end of the run, this is in like late 74, they went on this just like spree of gimmicks to try and save it. For a while, they had Monty Hall as a guest host. They did a whole bunch of celebrity episodes and, just like I say, gimmicks like that.
Mike, is this what we're going to end up having to do for our show eventually?
You know what? We'll find out when we've been, what is this now? 13 years in. Let me know in 13 years if we need to start throwing out some wacky gimmicks. I'll be okay with it in 13 years. I can guarantee you that.
All right, great.
In fact, that culminated in November of 74. They changed to the all-star version, which was just celebrities. Very unsuccessful. Nobody liked it. The show had gone through so many changes at that point, and removing the idea of civilian contestants, nobody liked it. Although I do want to take a quick aside and point out a thing that I found that was a personal connection for me. In the first season of the all-star version, one of the 4 finalists, he didn't go on to win, but one of the 4 finalists is a gentleman by the name of Peter Boners. And yes, let's all take a moment to giggle at that name. That is why I know him. He's a fairly prolific actor and director.
You know him because his name was Boners?
Well, so here's the thing. In college, my roommate bought the first season of Alf on DVD. Because why wouldn't you? It's Alf. Let's go watch this ridiculous show. And he directed all the episodes of, or I don't know about all, but a fair amount of the episodes of the first season of Alf. And so, of course, being dumb, drunk college kids were cracking jokes and laughing about it. And then fast forward down the road a little bit, and we are watching all the Police Academy movies. And when we get to Police Academy 6, who do we see listed as the director other than our good friend Peter Boners? So that is a name that has stuck with me for years and years and years now.
Fantastic. I love it. Awesome.
Yeah. So where were we? We are in November of 74. That's when the all-star version happened. February of 75, they changed it back to the normal version. The very last gimmick that they tried was they had Betty White host an episode, which I want to find. I bet that's great. I want to see that one. But at this point, I mean, we were too late before we got to the All-Star version. The All-Star version just absolutely killed it. And we were beating a dead horse at that point. So 75, June 27th, 1975 to be exact, the plug is pulled. Tearful goodbye from the cast and crew on air. But that's when it went by the wayside. But again, not to be held down for long. 1979 is when the aforementioned Password Plus comes into play. They bring Ludden back. And at this point is when I noticed, maybe, it was more gradual than this, but I noticed a huge difference in his demeanor. Like we were talking earlier with Betty White. This is when I saw a big change in his demeanor, because in the 60s version, and I guess early 70s version, he always felt very, and like I said this with when I was talking about Betty White, he just felt very stiff and like he was playing a role, right? Like just not as comfortable. In the Password Plus, he is so high energy and into it and loving it. And maybe it was the fact that like he was so sad to leave the show originally and coming back for a new version, he was super hyped to be back doing it again. I can't say, but there is a noticeable uptick in his enthusiasm for the show in Password Plus.
I wonder if he was just happy in general to have work. It's 18 years after they first started the show.
Well, I suppose that's true. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. And then, unfortunately, in 1980 is when he announced his cancer bout and was no longer able to continue being host, but then was replaced by our Dean of Game Show host, Bill Cullen, which then ran until 1982.
Yeah, and Cullen had subbed in for him for a period of time as well. There was like a 6 or 8 week period of time when he was out for surgery, and Bill Cullen came in, and it was a different type of show. The best part was he didn't try to imitate what Ludden was doing. He was just being himself, and it was a good casual kind of way to do it, and people dug it, and so it was great to see him actually get that gig when Ludden finally had to step down because of his stomach cancer.
Well, and to me, that is the sign of a truly good game show host, in that they are able to adapt to any show but still make it theirs, and not like they're like, I think Drew Carey does a good job of not trying to be Bob Barker. He's making The Price is Right his while still carrying the sort of intended atmosphere of the show. So, this is a recurring segment with Password. You can't keep it down. 84, we saw Super Password, hosted by Bert Convy. This introduced a round called the Cashword bonus. I read about it, and I have not seen it, so I don't know the specifics. I tend to pick up the rules of the show better by watching it than reading about it. But basically, it was just harder passwords for more money. Maybe there's some nuances in there. I don't know. If anybody out there is a super fan of the Cashword bonus, please write us in and try to explain it to me better than the Wikipedia article does, because I don't get it.
Yeah, Bert Convy, you want to hear a funny story?
Sure.
I remember him from Win, Lose, or Draw, which, by the way, he had a production company with Burt Reynolds.
Was it called The Burts?
It was called Bert and Bert, believe it or not.
Nice.
And their first foray into game shows was a Pictionary-based game called Win, Lose, or Draw, which, of course, Bert Convey was the host of. And he hosted a couple of other shows as well, including a match game reboot that never actually made it. But, yeah, I remember him. Gosh, I remember him so solidly. As soon as I saw his picture, I was like, Bert Convey, let me look this up. I know that guy.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about Win, Lose, or Draw sometime. I remember that show very, very fondly, and I've not seen it in a long time.
Yeah, I know. And that wasn't, by the way, it wasn't even around all that long.
Really? Interesting.
Like 2 seasons, I think.
Huh. Wow.
We'll have to go down that rabbit hole soon. All right, go ahead.
Anyways, that super password did not run for very long. And then, but again, 2008, it comes back. We now have $1 Million Password.
Oh.
Hosted appropriately enough by Regis Philbin, of course, of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire fame. That is his second $1 million show.
Yeah, if you're going to do a game show in the 2000s and it's going to have $1 million, there's only one person who can get the host.
Who else is going to do it? That ran for 2 seasons. And you know what? If you're asking me, that's not the last we're going to hear of Password. You know, first of all, we got this current surge in retro game shows and bringing back the old. But we've seen time and time again that this show leaves and comes back. It's very cyclical. There's no way it's down for the count.
You know, we didn't talk about the game show, the take-home game show at all, but Alan Ludden totally and completely loved the game and how well it sold for families, because he said that, you know, a lot of game shows, you know, especially like Jeopardy's and whatnot, were for people who really had a big knowledge, you know, they a broad knowledge, had life experience. But this was a game that you could play as long as you knew words. Right. You could play as long as you knew what the word was and what it meant, with even children. So children, high schoolers, college kids, everybody played this game. And that's why he loved it, because of how approachable it was.
Sure. And I think they played it in schools as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
The home game was super, super successful, and it is actually tied with the show Concentration as having the most successful home game version of any game show. They made so many different versions of it. Although what I think is interesting is they skipped 13. You know, the typical superstition of not including a 13th floor on a building. They went straight from 12 to 14 with the additions of the home games. But like you say, it's because it's so approachable. It sold so well. It was a phenomenon in the board game world. That being said, based on the gameplay of the show, I have to imagine the game is just a stack of cards with words written on them, right? Like, there can't be a whole lot to it. You could make one yourself.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You could easily make this game at home. You know, it's funny because there was a lot of games that we had growing up, and I don't know if this was the same with you, but like, for instance, Yahtzee, that we would run out of score sheets for, and we would just try to keep score on like a regular piece of paper. And then eventually, like, once computers came around, I was able to go in and like use my drawing program to draw a Yahtzee score sheet.
Insider's tip: there is no reason to buy the game Yahtzee. If you got 5 dice, you have Yahtzee.
It's very true.
Yep.
It's very true.
Yep.
And nowadays you can go on and literally download score sheets for just about any show that's out there, or any game that's out there, I mean.
That's awesome.
Mike, question for you, sidebar. Did you own any at-home versions of game shows growing up? And if you did, which ones were they?
Gosh, I distinctly remember playing the home game version of a Nickelodeon game show called Finders Keepers. It's vaguely similar to Legends of the Hidden Temple from later years, but I don't know that I owned it. I think a friend owned it and I played it at his house. I honestly don't remember. I just remember that the game was this big fake house and a bunch of crap, like just random stuff. And I don't even remember what all the stuff was, but we had no idea how to play it, because the concept of the show was that the contestants are in this super messy house and they have to find very specific things. So that you get this like clue of like, go find a frying pan, basically. And, you know, you go through this house, then it's just mess everywhere and you got to find the frying pan. So the idea of converting that to a home game, I don't know how it was supposed to work, but it did not. We did not actually succeed at playing it.
Yeah, you know, I do remember that show vaguely, and we'll have to go down the rabbit hole on that one at some point. But you could easily play that in your own home. And basically what you do No, I mean, what you do is it's simple as this: is the questions that are written are a little bit vague, and you have the other players vote for who came back with the thing that most looks like it.
Well, and what's great is I can't believe that I have remembered that home game version for my entire life. It never once occurred to me to just play it in my house.
And there you go. The only one I ever had was Family Feud. That was it. I did have Pictionary, so I guess you could say I had win, lose, or draw in that regard.
I have very vague memories of one, and it may be Family Feud, where they had like little sliders covering up the answers, and you'd have to I don't remember. It's too vague of a memory to know what it was, but I think it may have been a game show based thing.
Well, there it is. All right, I guess it's time to do our ratings at this point, would you say?
Yeah, let's do the ratings. What are we rating them out of?
I think that the password is passwords.
Rating out of 5 passwords. All right. Well, what you got for me?
I'm going to go 3.5 passwords because I really feel like I didn't remember this game as much, but as we did the research, I realized that not only do I remember it, but I remember it well, and it plays through. It's truthful. I love Betty White in this. I think you can go back and watch the old episodes of this, and they're as much fun to watch as they are today. I don't think words get really old. You know what I'm saying? I think this has a timeless effect to it. I think we're going to see this back over and over again. 3.5 passwords. Over to you, Mike.
I agree 100%. Obviously, as we've seen, it keeps coming back. There is a universality to this show, a approachableness. Anyone can play it, but again, it takes some skill to be really good at it. And I agree with everything that you said, but I'm going to go a little bit more and say I'm going to give it 4 passwords just because it has been around for so long. It's so ubiquitous. It's all over, culture. It's just ingrained in American culture. And again, we're seeing it come back again sometime, I'm sure. 4 passwords.
All right, Mike, that's all the time we've got for today.
All right. As always, a special thank you to Christian and the folks at Buzzer Blog and to everyone who's listening and takes the time to contact us.
Tune in again next time when we bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows, as well as a brand new featured show, too.
And remember, you can always catch us online. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, the password is... keep it to yourself. Wait, that's not one word. Dang it.
Mike, you are really terrible at this. All right, Michael. I'll see you next week.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
All right, Tom, what'd you learn this week?
So I think I really want to own more home games, whether it's video or tabletop versions. I love home games, and I think this made me Jones for having more home games.
I agree with you, and actually I've been scoping out prices of the remote control NES game. I'm going to get that pretty soon here. It's not great, but I really want to play it.
All right, cool. What about you? What did you learn?
I learned that Betty White is a national treasure, and she is just the most amazing person in the world, and it's going to be a sad day when she's gone. Everybody needs to give more love to Betty White.
Betty, if you're listening, we love you. Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.